Hi, welcome to Fiberchats. My name is Irina. I'm the host here, and my guest is one of the people that was on my dream list category for probably as long as I started this channel, since I started this channel. Ambah O'Brien, welcome to Fiberchats.
Hello, thank you for inviting me. It's so nice to meet you and be here.
And Gay, thank you for the introduction. I really appreciate you. You are in Australia. You're an Australian knitwear designer, and your son is actually responsible for you becoming a knitter, I've heard. So tell us a little bit like about your story and about you growing up and you discovering knitting.
My knitting journey, I guess, is interesting because, as you say, my son had a lot to do with it. And I really, as an adult, didn't think I would ever become a knitter. So I've surprised myself by not only becoming a knitter and knitting garments and big things, but becoming a knitwear designer, which was not on the cards for me at all. But that said, when I look back over my life, everything kind of has led to this place, so it makes sense. My mum is incredibly creative and is the kind of creative person that can just knit from her imagination. She wouldn't need a pattern. She can sew in the same way. She studied fashion design, was always creating clothing masterpieces, creations. She could just whip up something in a day. I don't have those skills, but I have learned a lot from watching her and inspired by her style and her creativity. And she would delve into kind of side projects like painting fabrics, creating all kinds of textiles. Textiles has been her main passion. And so as a child, I grew up in a very creative house with always lots of materials to play with, and that was always my happy place, to be at a table making jewellery or drawing or making things. And as I became older, I was interested in fashion. And that when I was in high school, that was what I thought I might do when I grow up, become a fashion designer, which in a strange turn of events, in some way I am with the knitting design, but I didn't go study that. I focused on art, and painting became my real passions. And um, yeah, over the years, then I thought that I needed to probably have something more practical as a job to earn an income from, and had a passion for um, herbs, naturopathy, herbal medicine, and studied in that area, thinking that I would become a naturopath. And I didn't finish those studies. I got a fair way through. I qualified as a Bowen practitioner, which is an Australian modality. It's a kind of combination of physical body work with an energy element to it. So it's kind of got a almost Reiki aspect to it. And I started practicing in that, and set up my studio where I practice with my clients. And at that time, so I was still completing my studies in natural medicine, and had my son with my partner, Andy. And so I'd started my Bowen therapy practice, was studying mothering, and with Andy, we had built a cute little stone cottage in the bush where we lived and grew our vegetables. And he's an architect. And so interestingly, when I set up my studio, I painted it and fitted out so that it was kind of decorated how it felt nice. And then I started seeing my clients. And I just had this realization that I enjoyed setting up the studio more than I did actually treating people. And it was a pretty intense realization because I'd invested years and money into my studies and had thought that that would be my like day job, that would finance perhaps me doing art on the side or something. And I talked to Andy about it, and he was just amazing. He said, "Don't worry about it. don't continue that path if you're not feeling it. Look, you can come and do some interior design things for me as an architect. And I thought, wow, that sounds great. I can be creative and work with him. He has a small practice, just him and occasionally other people that work with him. And so I thought, okay, I'll do that. And meanwhile, along the same path, I'd always earned extra income through children's face painting and body painting. So I always had, that was how I earned my kind of side income while I was studying. And so I was continuing that as well, working for him a little bit. And then I found that to be nowhere near as glamorous as I thought it would be. It ended up just being picking out taps and and I found it pretty tedious, not quite as fun as decorating my treatment studio with crystals and plants and pretty things. So I was still doing that with him, working with him, doing essentially the things that he liked least to do. And but feeling liberated from that study where I felt a bit sick about having spent so much time and money on it and then abandoning it. But it felt good. And then before long, I had some amazing opportunities in the body art world come to me that ended up making me far too busy to do anything for Andy, much to his annoyance. And those things were a job in Hong Kong for a couple of weeks where I was body painting as a performance. And then I would teach as well. I toured Australia teaching. I was invited a couple of times to America to teach at conventions and did promotional work for various companies, which involved travel and painting models to be live performers, or I would paint them as a live performance so people would watch over an evening it evolve. And I connect that also to fashion design and knitwear design, where it's about creating an artwork on the body. Sometimes it would be replicating clothes and design and using colour in a way that I relate to as a knitwear designer down the track. So I became really busy with that, and I was travelling a lot, and also it meant that I could be at home during the week a lot for our son, so we could balance childcare, which was really fantastic. And then over the years, our son grew older and he started attending a Waldorf Steiner school where there's a lot of knitting, a lot of beautiful craft and natural materials. And he, at age 7, they taught them to knit. Before that, they did other fibre crafts. So he was always learning crafts along the way. And the children would generally be wearing beautiful hand knits, which I couldn't knit. That was where I thought, oh, I'll never knit a garment. But if I was handed down some knitwear or found some, purchased some, or some knit for Felix, our son, I treasure it. I always loved hand knits and appreciated them. And also the little toys. I mean, one of the first things he made was just a tiny little knitted chicken, which I think was just a square of garter stitch folded across and then little tufts on the top for its feathers, and really cute. At the same time, another mum whose child was in the same class as Felix set up a yarn store called Zigo Zago, and she was really excited about it. She bought beautiful yarn and fabrics as well and was starting an online business. And I was pretty excited for her, and seeing the beautiful yarn that she had bought really piqued my interest. I'd been with the body art, I would occasionally make headpieces and accessories for the models to wear. And one of those in recent times had been a crown that I just crocheted without really knowing how to crochet. I just sort of did a coral random knobbly crochet and made a wire crown structure that I sewed it onto for this ocean princess body painting that I was doing. And I would just get thrifted yarn from what we call op shops, thrift stores. And so I wasn't really thinking much about the quality of the yarn, although back to my childhood, I had seen my mother and my grandmother knitting incredible 80s knitwear. They were doing colour work and texture. I remember my grandmother making a beautiful entrelac coat with fuzzy, it must have been mohair yarn when I think about it now. And recently I was thinking, oh, I wish that coat survived. I don't know where it is, but it was such a big project that she made and wore, and it was absolutely beautiful. So Alex, who set up Zigo Zago, and Zigo Zago's now since been taken over by Pam, she was an avid knitter, always knitting beautiful things, and I became quite entranced by that and bought some yarn from her without even knowing how to knit. I thought maybe I'd do a random crochet thing, but she encouraged me to sign up to Ravelry. So she was my gateway to Ravelry. And although it was months, perhaps even a year before I even really took up knitting after signing up to Ravelry, it definitely got me inspired. So I'm not sure she pointed out or I found the back to scarf pattern, which was really popular 12, 15 years ago, and a really simple triangular garter stitch shawl. And for some reason, that was my first cast on. It may have been due to Alex. And so I found the pattern, had no real idea. But I knew that my son, Felix, had been learning knitting at school. So I asked him to show me how to cast on and knit. There was only knit stitches, so I wasn't too overwhelmed by that. And then at the end, I got him to show me how to bind off. So I credit him with teaching me how to knit. And he was such a good teacher who watched me like a hawk. And, you know, if he noticed any holes or irregularities, he would boss me into fixing them up. Hey, Mum, you need to fix that. So it was good because it really made me more aware of what I was doing and my mistakes.
Yeah.
And Alex was incredibly encouraging. She was excited to see the progress. She had her blog and she was looking forward to being able to post things from relating to her yarn store, so the yarn that I purchased from her store. And yeah, so a combination of Alex and my son and also amazing yarn. The yarn I bought from Alex, the first one, I can't think of the name of it, but I remember that after that one I bought Madeline Tosh from her and knit a stripy Bactus and just loved every stitch. I was knitting with this amazing yarn that was so subtly dyed and just interesting. It was, every stitch felt like exciting to me. I was like, wow, look at that little change of colour and the richness, like the sheen of the yarn. And I just bought some cheap op shop needles and spent all my money on the yarn. And yeah, it was just a really good experience. And that shawl, the stripy one I made with Madeline Tosh, I just wore and wore and wore. It was such a practical project, even though it took me, I guess, a long time, whatever that means, but I was enjoying knitting it and loved wearing it. So I was hooked from them and got a few more tips from Alex along the way and YouTube and, you know, just so many places to learn.
Do you still have that sense of wonder when you knit this new to you yarn? Because like I find myself half of the time I'm wasting just admiring my stitches. I'm just looking at, oh, look at this speck of color and look at that speck of color.
Absolutely. It doesn't grow old. And yarn that I might not have knit for some time, I come back to it and I'm like, oh, that's right, this yarn, it's so beautiful for whatever reason. It's the speckle or the texture of it or how it looks knit up, or when you're knitting it and you want to just keep patching it. Yeah, that's still there.
I find that you and I have some similarities because I also learned to knit as an adult. And I noticed that when I talk to people who learn to knit when they older, not when they like young kids and they knitted all their life on and off, there is this sense of urgency in us. We feel like we wasted so many years not knitting, but we need to catch up and we need to learn all the new techniques and try new projects and do as much as we can. Like, do you get the same sense?
I can absolutely relate to that. Yeah, it just felt like, oh, wow, yes, this thing that makes perfect sense, that I always like to do something while I'm watching TV or listening, or, and this knitting just fit in so perfectly in ways that I would normally have done other craft. But yeah, and it's pretty much immediately became an obsession and has stayed that way 14, 15 years later. So yeah.
You mentioned
And
you were like looking at videos on YouTube and getting some tips from your son and from your friend. Um, how did it go from that to suddenly, like today, you have over 200 designs on your Ravelry page? Like, how did you decide that you need to become a designer, to announce to the world that I'm a designer?
well, I very quietly announced it with my first pattern. It was not my intention to become a designer at all. And yeah, I had noticed amazing knitting designers, especially at that time. There was Stephen West, who's still amazing knitting designers, but some really prominent personalities and creating amazing uh, designs for knitters. And I didn't see myself in that kind of space as a designer. I was still pretty focused on the work I was doing with the face and body art, and it was probably about 10 years since that had really exploded for me. So I was starting to feel um, just a bit tired of all the traveling. I was missing my son. I was away a lot on weekends and holidays and missing a lot of those moments and starting to feel, yeah, tired. So the knitting filled like a void in terms of just that kind of satisfying non-work thing that was just filling my cup in a way that was lovely for me. But also because I was working a lot on weekends and he was at school during the week, I had a lot of time, it turned out, during the week to dive into knitting. So I really just went hard. And I guess a parallel too is at the same time I'd been creating online tutorials for face painting. So I was creating PDFs and YouTubes step by step, and that was to accompany the workshops and the teaching I was doing. But I was thinking, oh, maybe I could wind back on the workshops with the online material that I was creating. So I was sort of focusing a bit on that as well to change the balance of the work I was doing. So I guess that idea of online PDF sales helped spur on what became knitting design, and already having an online presence to that end with my the face painting and body art community. And there's a little bit of crossover there. There's a few fiber artists that are also face painters. And yeah, so again, I really thought, no, I'm not going to design knitting. But it was just a funny thing where one day I was looking for a pattern, couldn't find quite what I was looking for in my mind, decided to just create it. And then with some encouragement from Alex, turned it into an actual pattern, which she proofread for me. It wasn't tech edited. And I felt quite excited by it. And again, with her encouragement, I thought, maybe I'll just pop it on Ravelry, and if I can sell some copies of it, then I can buy some more beautiful yarn from Alex. Her yarn is quite luxurious, and I didn't have a big budget for lots of yarn. So I liked the idea of perhaps offsetting that. And it was amazing to me because I hadn't really engaged particularly in the Ravelry community. So I wasn't expecting to be supported in my little endeavour. I just quietly popped my pattern on Ravelry without fanfare. And to my amazement, copies, I think I had $2 on it for that first pattern, sold. And it blew my mind. I was like, wow, okay, this is interesting. Maybe I'll try again. I'll try another pattern. And pretty quickly, because as I said, I had quite a bit of time available to me, I designed my second pattern. And again, it sold. And we're not talking vast quantities, but enough for me to buy some more yarn and make another design.
You know what I admire
So,
about you? You actually a very smart and clever businesswoman, because if you guys didn't follow Ambah on Instagram yet, go and follow her. But when you look through your Instagram, and I've been following you for quite a while, you reuse the older designs. Like there's a lot of designers out there who never post their old designs. It's always the upcoming, the test need. It's all the excitement of the new things, and they forget that they have this library of old designs. You use your library all the time, and I appreciate that, because even designers that I'm a huge fan of, a lot of time if I go on their Ravelry and I've been following them for years, I discover new for me patterns. I'm like, oh, I missed that one. I didn't know she had that one. And with you, you use your old patterns all the time. You promote them all the time. So it's sort of this like, remember when I made this, right? How did you come up with this concept? Because I feel like you are one of the very few people who does it in this industry.
yeah, I'm not sure exactly when. I think because some designs lead on to other designs. For example, this heart lace motif, I first created a design with this in my first year of designing, and every couple of years or so I've added to the collection of these patterns. So every time I add something fresh, I think, oh, let's go back and revisit some of the old ones. So that might have sort of inspired that. And each year I like to look back at what I have done over the year, because it's good. I get so caught up, as you say, in the moment of the new design, the thing I'm focusing on, getting that done. And then my mind's like, and then the next thing, it's always 5 designs ahead in my mind of where I want to be. So for me, it's really great to go back and revisit those designs, especially at the end of the year. Or even when people pop a post on Instagram and I see it and I'm like, oh yeah, that design, and they've knit it in a whole different colorway and it feels fresh in the new colors. It's really exciting to see that as well. I maybe about 5 years ago, I started a promotion I call Knit August, where every day in August I would feature a pattern from my back catalogue and have a special promotion price for it just for 24 hours.
You have no
And
idea
that was a
how much my Ravelry library grew because of that promotion.
so clearly that was successful. Yeah, it's amazing how many people do engage with that and want to know about the older patterns and appreciate them, or even are reminded that they have that in their library already and have been meaning to knit it, maybe already had the yarn as well. So they're like, oh yeah, you've reminded me about that pattern. And obviously that's good. I feel like I, yeah, it's tricky. I mean, patterns I look back at, as I say, when they knit in fresh colorway. I'd love to re-knit all of my my designs in new colorways. Like some of them I absolutely love. And yeah, there's so much there already. I do like to create new. I get excited by new ideas and exploring techniques. And each year I seem to maybe deep dive in a different technique or area. But I've taken time with the older patterns to, particularly some of the more popular ones, reformat them and bring them up to my current style. So the older patterns, for the first 5 years, I was working with a particular graphic designer and tech editor, and we created a sort of template. And I did that fairly early on. After the first couple of patterns, I realised that it would be good to invest in that and So she created the first iteration of my logo, and then over the years, my style has changed and evolved and still is to some extent, but it's a more standard template now that I use, and it's different. So I like to, when I've got a bit of time, dig through the back catalogue and find a pattern that hasn't been updated and give it a little update and maybe fresh photos. Last year, one of those patterns was the sea dragon, and I knit fresh samples, and I also created like different option for those samples, so just expanded the pattern a little bit more. And I really enjoy that too, revisiting old patterns and giving them the style update, but also sometimes a revamp, which is really cool.
Have you
So
had an experience when you took a pattern down, or when you look back and you're like, oh, I shouldn't have done that? So is there like any regrets in your design career?
that's a good question. I've never taken any down. There's some where I would certainly do it differently now.
I mean, I'll tell you why I'm asking you, because when I look back at all the interviews I've done on my channel, some of them are like most memorable interviews ever, and some of them I was, like when I first started, I'm looking back and it's a little cringe for me to see myself told. It's like not everything is absolutely brilliant, but then I feel like it represents how rich this community is and how different we all are. And it's sort of like the library, right? Like when you go, and some books you can read over and over again, and some books you just have it. But so it's like, it's sort of that feeling of like, this is my experience with this channel. So when I'm thinking about design library, it's almost the same. Like maybe it wasn't the most successful pattern, and maybe there is only a few copies that sold, but it was your journey and it was your inspiration at that time, and you enjoyed the process and you probably learned something.
absolutely. And some of those patterns that perhaps didn't sell well or get picked up are some of my favourite patterns. So it's not always necessarily, I think, what, yeah, I love this pattern, but I guess it just didn't hit right for whatever reason. That said, there are patterns where I think, yeah, I would do that differently now, or should I still have that? I have questioned, I've just been really reluctant to take any down for no real reason. None that I've disliked enough to take down anyway at this point. So, yeah.
I saw a post on your Instagram one time that you decided that you're going to create a wardrobe for yourself, and you're going to be holding yourself accountable for like wearing your needs. How is that going for you?
I know for a couple of years I was sewing a lot of clothes, and I still wear a lot of those clothes. The last couple of years I've been sewing a lot less, and I just haven't had, I don't know what it is, it just hasn't flowed for me in the same way that it did a few years back where I was engaged. And so that would have been part of the wardrobe building, as well as including knitwear. And I add the knitwear aspect to it. I feel like, yeah, I don't knit a lot of garments. I focus a lot on shawls as well, but try to be pretty intentional about the garments that I'm knitting, that it's something that I recognise I'd like in my wardrobe. For example, the Baronia cardigan I designed a couple of years ago, and then about a year ago in autumn, which it is here now, I was reaching for it and thinking, oh, I really want a pullover version. I feel like that would be a great thing in my wardrobe. So I decided to design the pullover version and a vest version, and both of those I wore a lot last winter. They really were the practical item. So I try and be intentional in that way, and I figure if it's something that I will find useful, hopefully that resonates with other people as well. So yeah, that is where a lot of my design comes from generally. And the sewing, I mean, I made a skirt a few months ago that I wear all the time. I do generally prefer things that I've sewn because they fit me better. And that's the same with knitwear too, that I can adjust it to my body shape in a way that suits me, or the length, or um, yeah, so it's much more practical. And of my wardrobe, even though I haven't been sewing a lot of things, the majority of it that I wear are things that I've made.
Is
And
your
then
son
there's
impressed with what he created?
he's so sweet about it. He is. He doesn't really knit much himself. Although it was very cute a few months ago, I finished a large throw with um, little flower panels as part of, this is a version of it here. I don't know if you can see.
Yeah.
So the Cosmos Blossom throw, and he saw that and he's like, I think I might knit one for myself in blues, which I was pretty amazed by because he's never knit lace or anything. So it's pretty sweet seeing him inspired by that. He's excited by the whole, I guess, journey that he sees that I'm creating a business and working within it. And he participates in ways too. Over the years, I've had him making stitch markers, and we talk about designs, we talk about names. He's modelled some things, I've made some things for him. So he's quite engaged and involved. And a few years ago, when I went to the US for Vogue Knit, San Francisco and New York, I took him with me as my intern. So he came and travelled, and he helped me set up some yarn store trunk shows where we went and hung out, and I brought some samples along and he chatted to the knitters. And yeah, so he's been a wonderful support, not just a teacher.
Does it ever get stressful? Like, do you ever wish you were just knitting, sitting home and knitting whatever you felt like from Ravelry and not working on the next design and thinking about the deadlines and testing and all that stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. There's and I mean, I can only blame myself for it being stressful, but my ambitions far outweigh my capabilities, I guess, is a simple way of putting that. That I think, oh, I can do that and that and that by then, and self-imposed deadlines, and then it becomes quite intense. Um, so I tend to push myself pretty hard, and there's, I guess, light and shade in all of that anyway, that I'm knitting projects that I feel excited and passionate about. Sometimes they might get frustrating where I'm struggling with an aspect of the design, or ripping out a lot, or my brain just doesn't seem to be working in a particular way. And working quite intensively. Um, but I keep piling my plate up with all those things and overall gain a lot of satisfaction from it. So yeah, I it's difficult to think of a time where I'd be like, I'm just doing non-work knitting, which it's hard to kind of fathom that in a way now that it's just so entrenched in my life and what I do.
What's your relationship with swatching? Do you love swatching, hate swatching, use it as necessary evil?
Don't love it. Necessary evil. It is absolutely necessary for garments and for testing out design ideas. Um, Sometimes I try and swatch as part of the design, or for example, maybe make a small version, a hat or something, as part of a swatch to make it a bit more interesting for me. Um, but yeah, it's definitely that step before getting stuck into the good part. But yeah, it's gives so much useful information and is necessary. So
Well,
Yeah.
tell me about the good part. Like, what's good for you, and how do you go about designing? Like, how does the idea start? Is that the yarn that inspires you, or do you see some pattern that you think, oh, that's gonna make a beautiful cardigan? Or like, how does your brain work?
In all those ways, every design probably has a slightly different beginning. Some will be evolution of previous designs where I've discovered a stitch pattern or created an element that I want to repeat. Or, as I said before, it's a practical, I'd like this pullover, I feel like that would fit into my wardrobe. And then yarn is important too. I don't think I've got a crazily big stash. I don't like having too much. I try to be intentional about the yarn I buy, but I like having palettes, color palettes available to me. So I'll buy maybe from a couple of different brands and build up a good range of colors so that I can, when I'm starting to think about a design, rummage through my stash and have options there on hand. Other times I'll obsess with a color idea and hunt the internet for the yarn or talk to a yarn dyer about collaborating and go from there. So sometimes it's about a color. I might just see something in the world, a garment or a painting where a particular color combination has caught my eye. And yeah, sometimes I think I come from all right, I just want a satisfying quick knit project, maybe a little shawl, and I start thinking about a design from that like little guideline that I'll give myself to kind of work within.
Is it easier for you to decide on the new project by yourself, or do you prefer collaborations when they tell you like you have that many colors and you have to make us a shawl?
I like both. Yeah. I think some of my favorite designs have come from collaborations where there's been parameters that I need to work within. And I also like the freedom to be just excited about an idea and go for it. So both, yeah. And sometimes it can feel a little restrictive to the collaboration where I think, oh, feel kind of maybe I'm pushing a bit in this design that's not flowing as easily as I would like. But that's a good challenge to work around that and take it somewhere new and fresh. Yeah.
I feel like you are one of the most well-known Advent designers, because for any Advent lovers out there, if you're looking for some interesting design, Ambah is your go. I love your Advent designs because it's usually like it's simple enough that you get into the rhythm of it, but because the colors changing and they usually you change a little bit the lace pattern here and there, it's ever interesting because something is always changes. Do you love working on Advents?
I do. I mean, again, it is quite the design challenge because 20, generally 24 mini skeins of 10 to 15, 10 to 20 grams. And I want to, like, generally the challenge for me is to not have to try and use even amounts of each colour, although not every design does. I've given myself some freedom. Well, the first Advent I did, which was over 8 years ago now. I've been doing the Advent cal for 8 years. Was small amounts, and you could actually get two versions of that shawl or wrap out of one set because you use the opposite. So that was fun. Yeah, so it's an interesting challenge to have something that's either a good amount that's knit each day with the yarn, which is sort of the idea of it, and or with garments too. That's challenging, having something that uses that amount of yarn across all the sizes, so that everyone's getting to make the most of their beautiful Advent sets without ideally buying two of the same. which is where a contrast colour can come in handy to kind of expand the yardage a bit. Yeah, it's an interesting challenge each year. Like now, I'm really excited about 2 ideas that I have for Advent, so I'm looking forward to getting started with those.
When you start with them, do you use your leftover yarn from home?
Often I do. Often I build a set with the palette that I have at home. Sometimes I don't usually buy an Advent calendar to open that year, but if someone has dyed one and they're doing a re-dye of a calendar that I really loved, that I was excited by people opening, then I'll probably buy that calendar. There's a couple that I bought last year that were just beautiful, and I know I'll design with one of those for this year. So it's not a current calendar. And in a way, for me, it is about people being able to just dive into their stash as well and not necessarily having to buy an expensive Advent calendar to participate, that they can use the leftovers. And then I like to do scraptastic designs where they can use the leftovers from those leftovers and make the most of it. Yeah, I
Actually
like to be.
knitted a lot of your shawls with whatever leftover yarns I had, and it's so precious because when you knit it, it's like a journey over what you already knitted. So you're reminded of all the projects that you've done with those leftover yarns.
It's so lovely. Last year during the festive knit along, one of the participants knit one of those throws with the squares, and she'd knit a square. She had a basket full of leftovers, and she just put her hand in and pull one out and knit the square for the day. And then she'd post the square and describe what the yarn had been used for. It was for a garment for a daughter, and so each day this story of all of her past projects came with her current project, which was like the leftover. It was so lovely. Like that was one of my favorite ones to watch.
Right. I also knitted, I told you before we started that I very rarely knit the same project twice, but I made 3 lily peelies. And I know it's one of your very popular designs. When you see other people make it, do you ever wish like you did it with this color combination?
All the time. And I wish, yeah, that's a pattern I would like to make at least another of. I've always intended to go back and make more. But yeah, all the time. I made the Lily Pilly shawls, so a shawl version of it with a different colorway, and that was satisfied a little bit of that. But I mean, in the test knit, I remember one knitter using charcoal and light grey for the stripes and then a neon for the lace. And that was my favourite. I loved it so much. It was really exciting to, yeah, just see how people use colour. And it happens all the time. People knit something in other colours and I'm just like, oh, I fall in love with it,
One of
which
my
inspires me.
one of my friends bought a bag for her birthday and she came to me with the bag and she's like, can you please make a lily peely for me to match that bag? So
Oh,
that was the hardest thing ever because we had to find the yarn that exactly matches that thread. And it wasn't the easy feat, you know.
yeah, that can be hard. And especially shopping online, trying to find colours, the right colours.
I mean, the beauty of knitting shawls is that you can pull this skein of yarn that you bought at some festival and you had no plans for. You just bought it because you love the color, and you can put it in the shawl and combine different dyers and make something very unique. So I love my fingering collection for your shawl just because of that reason, you know. And it's also like reminds you all the travels that you do. Like you remember the festival where you bought that special skein. So it's sort of the same memory lane, you know, traveling down the memory lane.
Absolutely. And I love reading those stories when people talk about the project that they're knitting with the yarn that's their souvenir yarn or where they got it from. And yeah, it's so lovely. And that's a wonderful part of that online community, people sharing all those beautiful stories.
Well, talking of online community, you have a very busy Ravelry group and you're very busy on Instagram as well. How do you treat the social media? Like, is that your community? Is that like where your friendships are? Or is that also part of the job and just another marketing tool?
All of those, really. Yeah, it's a marketing tool and a genuine place to connect and have community. I mean, I just feel so grateful for people interacting with me and sharing their projects. And as I say, those stories fill my cup, when people talk about that special yarn that they use to knit into something that I designed, or they share a photo of them wearing something that I designed that they've knit in their amazing colours. I mean, it's just so inspiring. The Ravelry group, particularly, I find it harder to create that space on Instagram, for example. Instagram probably is more of a promotional tool. I just find it a bit harder to kind of find, especially in recent years, the way the algorithm works, it's just a bit harder to sort of connect with people. But I do look for posts where I've been tagged. I try and engage as much as I can. I really love seeing what people are doing and talking about. And then in the Ravelry group, it's a much easier space to hang out. Unfortunately, not everybody can hang out there, so I'm mindful of that. I have tried a couple of other options, a Facebook group, which is mildly active, but it just doesn't have the same way of ordering that the Ravelry group does, and a Mighty Networks group. So I've tried a few other places, but Ravelry is just consistently the place where a lot of people do hang out. There's just such lovely community there. People enjoy the space, and so they contribute to it. In my group in particular, really helpful and encouraging. And yeah, so I'm there every day, participating, moderating, wanting it to be that space. So wanting it to be kind and generous and friendly and welcoming, and then full of fun knitting and whatever that is, whether you're knitting from stash or you've bought a beautiful set of yarn, and dyers come and talk about what they're doing there, which is really wonderful. We've all discovered lots of yarn dyers through that space. And then having Shawls knit along, so shared knitting missions, which, always fun. And I just love creating designs for them that people get excited about, and then watching them unfold in the flavour of the person knitting them.
Describe me your day, like in general, because like I hear so many things happening in your life, like you moderating your own groups and you posting your things and you designing and you testing all these designs and you promoting it, and you find time to knit. Like, describe me your average day.
I work a lot of hours. I do work a lot of hours, and it is pretty much just me with tech editors. My partner, Andy, does the bookkeeping aspect, which I really appreciate, and will help me brainstorm names and ideas and things. So, yeah, it's pretty flat out. I generally get up and do computer things first so that when my brain's fresh, so that might be, check in the Ravelry group, if there's a test knit, address any questions that are there. If I've got any kind of pattern support questions, I'll answer those. So the first thing is all the computer stuff. I might be going back and forth with the tech editor on a pattern, so doing that. If I'm going to write a pattern, and I might, during a week, think, okay, I want to write up this pattern. I'll focus this particular day where I'll need a few hours to get that written up. So, but generally that's in the morning. I might come back and check in again in the afternoon, especially if there's something like a test knit where people are wanting quick replies, or me to keep sending out the patterns. So generally though, once I've done the computer stuff in the morning, and maybe a little photo shoot, depending on what's on the list. Then I'll knit generally for the afternoon and evening with a few little breaks in between. One of the things that I've started to do in the last couple of years is I've got a standing desk and a walking mat treadmill thing. So when I get up and do the computer stuff in the morning, I try and get my steps in as well while I'm at it. And then go for little walks through the day as well, just to keep physically moving.
Right. Let's talk about those photo shoots because I love your photography. It's always so, I mean, it's hard to photograph shawl in a different way. There's like only that many shapes of the shawl and that many pictures you can take with it, and somehow you make it fresh and interesting looking. Tell me, is that like a struggle to come up with new ideas of how to photograph things, and who is doing all the photography?
Wow, I'm glad to hear you like it because I do feel very amateur. I take the photos of myself. I use a little clicker thing, and um, and partly because it's just, I guess it's that timing thing, where I can slot a photo shoot into the day rather than a big production of a big photo shoot where I perhaps need other people involved. So it's generally pretty easy. I take a lot of photos and filter out, and so most of them end up deleted. And in terms of styling, I just try and think of ways that I would style that project for starters. So it's trying to be practical to show people different ways that they could wear that shawl, and then to also hold it in a way that shows the shawl. I use myself as a model. For many years, I tended to use a mannequin. I was feeling very camera shy, so I forced myself to be in front of the camera a lot more, which, yeah, I'm getting more comfortable with it. And I think it's better to see it with the person than on a mannequin. Occasionally, I'll still style with a mannequin. Um, yeah, I'm not really sure what to say. I just keep it, it's a bit of a formula, like a neutral background, neutral clothes, really just trying to show the knitwear. And then I'll also do photos where perhaps it's pinned to a wall or flat lay and try and show other elements of the project as well.
Do you have a favorite shape of the shawl that you always come back to?
Yeah, definitely. I like tapered ends. So I love those asymmetrical wrap shapes where you can have the tapered ends rather than bulky ends. And then triangular shawls for the same reason. I like both the asymmetrical triangular shawl and the symmetrical triangular shawl. So um, yeah, something, the way I wear it is usually with the wider part at the front and wrapped around with the ends dangling down. So that's the shape that appeals to me. That said, in my studio, when I'm at the computer typing and it's a bit cold, I like something that I can just wrap around my shoulders. And so big throw or wrap can be really nice for those kind of specific circumstances as well. Yeah,
How many things do you usually work on at the same time?
not many. I'm quite almost monogamous knitter. Currently, I have 2 designs on the needles, and that's often I probably have one, except the second one I just cast on yesterday. I'm I have a set up on the table. It's something I don't, it's not as mobile. So it's very much a sit down and focus on project. And then the other project's a bit more mobile and um, portable. So they're kind of to balance each other out a little bit. I'm pretty strict with that because I like to finish things. So there's a discipline in me, just like, right, finish this. And I'll have little goals, like finish this section and then you can go for a walk, or my reward program. And also deadlines. As I said earlier, I can be quite strict with my deadlines or over ambitious. So I'm often just like frantically trying to finish something that I had started thinking I would knit it much faster than I had.
You ever
Yeah.
think like I'll if I'll go for a walk, I'll reward myself with knitting? Is that ever a thing?
Ah, definitely. I mean, there's some days where it's rare that there's a day that I don't knit, but some days uh it's a relief to finally get to the knitting part of the day, you know. It is so nice to be knitting and enjoying that. Um yeah, I mean that's my reward for doing the computer work is I get to knit.
Well, you've done a lot of things like over the years. You did the shawl pins and you did stitch markers and knitted some bracelets and all kinds of things. Is that something that like you treat as a side hobby, or is that something to make it more interesting for you?
Both of those, because in my crafty childhood years, I did a lot of jewellery making. So that's like a little, and with making accessories for body art. And I mean, I had an Etsy store years before the knitting. So I would make little things and sell them on my Etsy store. So I've always kind of liked making accessories and jewellery. And combining that with knitting is pretty exciting. The fact that I could make shawl pins and enamel pins. And I wanted to create little unique prizes for knit-alongs, something. So initially I didn't sell any of those things. I'd be like, no, you have to enter an FO into the knit-along to be able to maybe win one of these. So I started the stitch markers in that way and then had a lot of demand for them. So I released a few batches of them and it would just be kind of a single release and they'd sell out. And the shawl pins, over the years I've developed my logo and I just loved it so much that creating it as a shawl pin seemed like a natural progression. So yeah, it's interesting. It's more like a little side project that I get to do as part of this overall business, but probably I couldn't see that part being a sole income source on its own. It doesn't quite have the momentum, especially since COVID, all the postage costs have gone up, everything's increased. So it's just a little less accessible to people overseas. And yeah, I guess trends change. I mean, enamel pins, the first few orders of those that I had sold out really quickly. And now I've maintained stock, so they just don't sell out as quickly anymore. It's the pin trend kind of moved on to something else. The cuffs, the leather cuffs, they would always sell out, but they're tricky to get. There was a Russian leather worker who would make them for me, and then it became really tricky to source them from her. I haven't really got anything on the horizon in terms of physical items.
Well, talking about new things, what are you working on right now? And maybe you can give us some sneak peek of what's coming up.
Right now, my needles are something that I probably will be revealing around the time of this airing, and that's a design for the summer solstice or June solstice knit along. Every year I've been running a knit along in June, and the last couple of years it was a mystery knit along. Other years it's not necessarily mystery, or it might involve mini skeins. And this year's involves mini skeins, and it's not a mystery. I'll be revealing the design, and it's sun inspired. I'm looking forward to sharing that one. It's got a very 80s retro vibe to it. So that's what's on the needles. And another on the needles is a little secret project that's a collaboration with the yarn dyer. So I won't say anything about that just yet either. So sorry. But when this will air in a couple of weeks, next week I will be publishing this design.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that.
So this is called Bliss Bloss Shawl, and it's Intarsia. And I know Intarsia can be a bit daunting for some knitters. It is a bit of a juggle. It's certainly, I suggest, a place where you maybe have a tray or a table or some way of arranging your yarn, especially with this one where there's a few colours being worked at once. But it's so satisfying, and I was very happy to have feedback from some of the test knitters where it was their first Intarsia project and they enjoyed it and found it accessible and doable. So it's not, yeah, it's worth a try, I think, if you feel inspired enough by the design. And it's got a few options. So you can knit one flower, or you can keep adding the flowers. So you just add increased flowers, a centre flower, and then decrease flowers. And this was actually my swatch. Speaking of swatches earlier, I decided to make this my swatch. So I knew the shape. So I knit that part of the shawl first. And then this flower, I don't know how many times I knit that. So I just kept tripping back and tweaking it a little bit as I was altering the design. And then finished it off. So that was a satisfying swatch that turned into the actual project as well. And this is a 3-flower version.
I love
So I'm really excited by this. The testers versions are just so cute. It's really lovely. And yeah, 3 sizes. So this is a pretty good size for a cozy shawl. So that will have been published at the airing of this podcast. And then another one that will be coming out in May is this little cutie, which I'm calling Sprinkles, the Sprinkles shawl. Initially, I was going to call it fairy bread, which is a delicacy in Australia. Fairy bread is a party food in childhood parties where you get nice fluffy white bread and butter it and then sprinkle sprinkles or hundreds and thousands on top of it and cut it into triangles, and that's fairy bread. So I did think this would be fairy bread. And the yarn that I used for the light pink is actually called Hundreds and Thousands Colorway, which also inspired. But when I was knitting it, I thought, I think it looks more like sprinkles than fairy bread. So the name for this will be Sprinkles.
Is that hard to come up with the names for your designs? Because like you have 250 or something designs out there. Is it getting harder to come up with new names?
Andy has come up with some good names. He came up with Sprinkles. He came up with Snaggletooth, which is one of my favourite names. That's another little shawl I released this year. So it's got the cute teeth. So I might start talking about a name and we'll throw back and forth a little bit, and that's often how a name evolves. And Felix occasionally will pipe in, or I'll Google related words that evoke what I'm trying to kind of achieve with the design, whether it's like the flowers or the hearts. This is something coming out in July, the heart cardigan, which I'm calling Heartigan. So it's a playful name is always lovely to have. So I try for that, and some hit and some don't. But yeah, it's tricky.
Have you ever tried to turn Andy into a knitter?
I have. He's got big chunky hands. He's not a very delicate knitting hand type of person. I maybe have managed to put needles in his hands and get him to do a stitch or two, but but he's got lots of design ideas.
I've seen a picture of you knitting with really large needles, so I'm sure there is something that can be made to work.
Actually, that would probably suit him because he's kind of like a big, strong guy. So yeah, that probably would. Yeah. But no, he's not interested as much as I've tried to persuade him. He loves me knitting tea cozies for him though, so he appreciates knits and hats.
Well, I hope I'll get to see you at one of the festivals or take a class with you. I'd love that. And maybe even in Australia one day. It was an absolute pleasure to have you on my channel and to chat with you. Thank you so very much for finding time to have this conversation. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
And I hope I get to meet you in Australia or America or somewhere else in this wide knitting world.
Yeah, let's make a wish. If we send it to the universe, it's going to happen. Thank you, Ambah.